Hey friends, it's Derek and I'm back with another Technician's Vlog. Today I happen to be sitting in the office just hanging out, and a bunch of the previous footage that I've been shooting of my jobs, I'm getting constantly interrupted and I'm never quite getting to the end of a series of shots so I can put together a narrative that makes sense. So in the interest of continuously dropping content so that I don't forget my YouTube password and forget how to upload and edit and all that good stuff, wanted to talk a little bit about something that a couple commenters asked about, which is how do I price my cabling services? So if you'll indulge me, I will put up on the screen a diagram of what I think is the life cycle of a business. It's got the initial investment, what I call accumulation, and then there are two ongoing cycles that I think are important in the lifespan of a business. One is the cash flow cycle, where you sell and receive money. And the other is the maintenance cycle, where you upkeep your tools and your environment and your people such that you can stave off what happens at the very end of the graph, which is winding down the business. Now, no business lasts forever. Everything is short term. We're just here for a little while, stewards of all these things that are in front of us. And while we're here, we're just trying to stave off the inevitable end of our business. So, to that effect, you got to make money, you got to charge, and you got to turn a profit. How do I do that in the context of my cabling business? So, for those of you, I can't imagine we're like 17, 18 episodes of this vlog in, but if you don't happen to remember, we install Cat6 structured cabling. So we make patch panels, we drag cables, we terminate keystones, all that good stuff. And every single one of those things goes into what I charge. So here's my basic formula that I use when I'm breaking out what it is I want to charge you when you hire me. So it's going to depend on a couple of things. The two broad categories for what we charge for will be either services, which is my labor, or widgets, which are the little pieces of plastic and metal that I sell you that perform some sort of service. A good example of a widget would be this surface mount box, or another good example, if I can get this out of here, would be a Cat6 keystone. This is something I buy from someone else and then I resell to you, or I use it in the process of delivering my service. Keystone. So I'll start with the widgets because those are the easiest to understand. For widgets like a keystone, if I buy this from somewhere, I'll spend perhaps 99 cents, something like that, for one of these keystones. I'm then going to use it to deliver my service to you, and I'm going to charge you money because I spent money on this thing. So as an example, this, when I sell it to you, will be $4 if I spent $1 on it. I do this for low-end, small, inexpensive plastic bits throughout my business. So there's a ton of little things I buy. Here's a surface mount. Here's a little 3D printed cable hanger that you might, hang something from the ceiling. And there's a million more things. There's the patch panels. All of these things, I'm looking to make a margin of 70% of whatever is my sale price to the end user. That 70% needs to be my gross margin. In theory, it's profit, but it's just an aspirational number. You're never going to get anywhere near 70% in the end. In the end, you'll have what's called net margin, and net margin is what you actually took home at the end of the day or month when you sold one of these products. Now, let's get into why I picked that number. 70% is awfully specific, isn't it? Well, whenever you purchase an item, if you've been reading business books, they'll tell you to look at something called cost centers. So a cost center is where my money is going when I'm buying this little widget and then I'm trying to get it ready to sell to somebody, and then I finally install it and take delivery of the money via invoice at the end of the life cycle of this product. So the life cycle of this product will encompass several cost centers. One, I need to buy it from somebody. They need to ship it to me. It's going to sit in a box in my place of business for an indeterminate amount of time. And then I'm going to take it out of the box sometime later, and I'm going to transport it to the place that I'm doing the work. And then I'm going to terminate onto it, test it, and then I'm going to label it and certify it with my Fluke or my Landtech. Everything I just said listed out quite a few cost centers that seem, in retrospect, kind of obvious, but when I was first starting out, all of this was invisible to me. I didn't really even think about it. We would just let these go for $1 or so. So the first cost center is what this thing cost me to purchase. That's cost center number 1. Cost center number 2 is how long did it sit in my office before I was able to find a person to purchase it from me so that I could sell it. If I bought this on a credit card for $1 and then it sat in my shop for an entire month, I had to pay interest on my credit card in order to keep this thing around. If I had to keep it for 2 months, for 3 months, for 4 months, you see where I'm going with this. There's a little bit of lost opportunity. I sank money into this, and then it sat on my shelf for months, and then I was finally able to find someone to purchase it from me, and then I got my money back, and then I got a little extra for my troubles, right? I marked it up. But did I mark it up enough? Probably not. What eats you alive on a lot of these little jobs is I'm buying these in 100 pack. And I'm buying a lot more than one, I assure you. So I'm spending at least $100 on this, and if I can deploy them quickly into the field, it's worth maybe $400 to me in revenue. I'm using that revenue, 1, to repay myself for the dollar I spent buying this in the first place, and then 2, my other cost center is the wasted time that I wasn't able to use my money for something else. My money is stuck in the physical form of this box until I deploy it. So I have to take into account that I can't use that money just yet until I've sold it. The next cost center that I take into account is the deployment process. When I take these into the field and I give them to the end user, and then I utilize them in the process of doing business, I'm terminating them onto a keystone, and the other end is a patch panel. I'm going to verify that that thing works correctly, and if I'm wrong, this gets tossed out unceremoniously, goodbye, and we grab another one and we do the work again. You're going to have a little bit of what you might think of as breakage. Some of these just don't work, either through human error, which is your staff or yourself making a mistake and like breaking the pins off, or just a manufacturing mistake. You would think that that's not common, but I've got entire boxes where they were off by 1 pin. So you don't realize that until you're terminating a whole bunch of them, and then you go through and start testing, and after you've terminated, you realize, oh, none of these are passing qualification, and you're doing it again. So you grab another box. You're out a whole box of these if that should happen. You know, maybe you can return it to the vendor that sold it to you, but maybe not. So that's a factor that I take into account. There are other cost centers that I think about for every single thing that I sell. The number one thing that gets you is the labor of the person that you are paying to make the installation happen. If I charge you $200 for a patch panel, admittedly that's quite high, what I just said, but if I charge you that amount of money, part of that money is for me to pay a man to go through, or a woman of course, pay anybody to go through here and terminate every single one of these down, and then test it, and then certify it, and then label it, and make it look pretty in the rack. And that all takes quite a bit of time, and that needs to be factored in to the price of the installation, the fully installed price of what I'm selling you. So let me give you an example of what labor costs in the state of Hawaii. Is it may cost you as much as, say, $33 to pay an individual to string the wires and terminate and do all that stuff. That's $33 an hour. Maybe it takes them 1 hour, maybe it takes them 2, etc. What do I calculate as my hourly rate? Well, I'm shooting for that 70% margin again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that $33 and I'm going to multiply it by 4, and I'm going to get a number that's pretty close to what I actually charge most of the time, which is $125 an hour. In the state of Hawaii, that is really low for labor. In the state of California, that might be incredibly high. I don't really know what other regions charge. But in Hawaii, I think I'm on kind of the low end. Cost of living here is really, really high, and the size of jobs can be pretty small. So you might only be able to bill for a couple of hours a day if you're having, if you're working by yourself and you're having only small business clients. You may not be able to bill for an 8-hour day. You also have to bill, one of your cost centers is that downtime. So there's this concept that I follow very closely and religiously, which is make hay while the sun is shining. And what that means is when you have the opportunity to make that money, make that markup, and bill it at 70% gross margin, you're going to want to do that at all times because the sun is not always shining. And you have a responsibility to your employees as a business owner to keep them employed and keep them getting a paycheck. Even if I can't find work for them to do because I'm having a slow sales period, or there's something about the construction cycle in our state that is slowing down and opportunities are reduced, I can't lay my people off. I like my people. I want them to thrive and be successful, so I owe them a steady paycheck. The way that I give them that paycheck is I take from the money that when we were doing really well and we were knocking it out, we built up a nice war chest, and that's in reserve for the emergencies. If we have a really tough time, like when COVID happened, what you would do is draw out of that reserve and pay people out so that you maintain a nice flat revenue stream for them. And that's part of my charging calculus. So labor, I multiply by 4. Parts, I multiply by 4. Up to a point. Like I just said, it would be expensive if I spent $99 for this on eBay. I didn't. But if I did, you wouldn't expect me to go to you and go, guess what? That's $400. You would laugh in my face. No one would buy that. Of course not. So at a certain point, and I'm going to have to leave it to you as the viewer, as the audience, you have to figure out what passes the test of reasonableness. And if something is unreasonably priced, these little plastic things for $3, $4, no one's going to blink. But they're going to blink pretty quickly if you tell them that this is $400. So normally, for something like this that has high cost, I factor in a few things. Can I sell it quickly? Is it going to sit in my shop for months on end? If it's going to, I don't buy it. We do, when you hire me, I buy it then. Otherwise, I don't buy it in advance and just let it sit in my shop if it's an expensive item, because that compounds the interest problem. If it's not something I can sell and I've locked up $20,000 in giant network cabinets and panels and switches, I can't use that $20,000 for anything else. It's just going to sit on my shelves until the business conditions allow me to offload it to a customer. So I don't buy expensive items if I don't think I'm going to be able to sell them. But for certain items, we mow through them like grass. So we go through cable like crazy. We go through the 24 patch panels really fast. And we go through keystones, wall plates, cable hangers, all that stuff. On every job we do, we burn through them very fast. So they'll be, as fast as I can buy this, I'm selling them. Buying it, I'm selling it. I'm buying it, I'm selling it. That's the cash flow life cycle. I'm invoicing, I'm getting paid, I'm buying product, I'm invoicing, I'm getting paid, I'm buying product. And that's the life cycle of that. The other cost center that a lot of people don't think about is the maintenance cycle. Most business owners that I've met who don't turn a profit don't take any thought or any time and think about what is the maintenance cycle and why does it keep kicking me in the rear end whenever I think I'm getting ahead? Tell me if this sounds familiar. You finally got ahead in your business, you've got a little bit of money saved up, and then bam, that portable generator you keep on your truck, it's stolen. But you had a little bit of money saved up, so you buy another one. And then bam, you get into a car accident and it goes flying out of the bed of the truck and it's in a million pieces on the highway. Why does the universe have it out for you? This is a thing that all business owners I've talked to encounter, is that something is always happening to wreck your business that is completely not something you're calculating when you're thinking of what could I charge for this? What could go wrong with me and the client? Well, you never think about car accidents, blown tires, a computer hard drive failed. You know, there's a million things that stop your business in its tracks, and I call that the maintenance cycle. It's a separate life cycle of all the things that make your business work that are not directly related to charging the customer and buying the product and performing the service. There's your vehicles, there's the office that we're in right now. The office that we are sitting in right now, the pipes over my head burst. Does that ever happen in your business? Did you account for that? Heck no. How could you even imagine it? It's an office. I didn't know there were water pipes up there, but there are. So you have to think about all of the physical elements that are vehicles, the 3D printer. If I'm 3D printing widgets all day long, little packs of 30 to make all the wire hangers that I want, well, you can't 3D print forever without it getting clogged. And it can only print so many widgets before the motor is just done. So you have to come up with some number of cost that you can assign to what the universe is going to throw at you when you least expect it. As you encounter these odd scenarios, you can make a cost center entry that tells you, like, all right, we got to think about oil changes in the cars. We got to think about the safety checks. We got to think about registration if you live in a state that has registration tax. You know, you got to think about the 25,000 mile, brake fluid flush, all that stuff, changing the tires. That's just for one vehicle. If you have 5 vehicles, that's astronomical. Most business owners figure it out after their first or second vehicle, but they're not going to figure out, what if my favorite bandsaw just breaks, the motor gives out, and I'm in the middle of doing a job? Did I have any money set aside to have another bandsaw brought in immediately from the hardware store? I sure hope so. So part of my calculus, when I'm charging for every little thing, service, labor, hourly, and widgets, I'm looking for that 70% margin, but in reality, I'm going to get something closer to 33% or 30%. And if you can beat 20%, you're doing quite well as a business operation. Inevitably, things are going to come off the wheels, and you're going to end up in that winding down phase because entropy always wins. So don't feel bad about it, but you can stave it off quite a while by charging appropriately and then winding down on your own terms, which would be better than going out of business rather suddenly. Like Hemingway says, bankruptcy sneaks up on you gradually at first, but then all at once. All right. I appreciate you guys sitting with me and letting me wax on. I could talk forever about all the things I've learned in running a business. The initial investment, the accumulation phase for me was very important. That's where to plant your business seed. Do you put it in an office downtown? Do you just work out of your car? Do you accumulate the 3D printer right away when you open? How many computers do you need? How many phones do you need? There's a million things. Like, I could just talk and talk and talk and talk. But I'll end it there. I really appreciate that you guys stuck it out with me. I'll have more content soon. I have a lot of footage in progress, so as soon as it's done, I'll just drop it. But thanks for waiting, and I'll see you again in the next one.